Hey, hi, hello, how is it going everyone? Today's video we're taking a look at Once Human and going to give you a little bit more detail on what to do for certain parts of the game that seem to be confusing for newcomers. So let's jump right in and get started with creating our character. Now, before we go into the things you should be looking out for when creating your character, I do want to mention that when you build your house, you will receive a blueprint at some point. And if you don't like the way your character looks or different stats about your character, you can actually change it from the mirror inside the game instead of having to create a new character. Now, the one thing you should be aware of is the fitness of your character, which you can see on this bar right here. Now, taking a look at this chart, you're going to see that your character's weight actually has an effect on your character's stats. So when creating or changing your character, I would definitely recommend looking at this and seeing what you might think is most important and design your character accordingly. Now, once your character has been created and you finally get into the game, many people are going to notice that the camera zoom by default is very close. Now, we can change this easily enough by going into settings, and then under mouse and display, you will see the slider for camera distance, which you can make whatever your liking is. And as you can see, it gives you a little bit more depth away from your character. Some people are going to like this, some people are not, but it's just an easy way to change it. While on the topic of camera, you can actually change which side of the character the camera is looking over, and utilizing this swap is pretty important in later parts of the game because it can save you from a lot of different damage, and you can just see that we can flip-flop pretty easily. Now, by default, this setting is tied to the caps lock key, which can be changed under settings. Then you go under keyboard, then combat, and you will have to scroll near the bottom where you'll be able to find switch camera, and you can change your keybind from there. Now the next part is about understanding some of the different icons on the bottom portion of your screen. Now these are going to include stamina, sanity, thirst, and hunger, which have to be managed within the game. And for stamina, the first is going to be the circle with the arm in it, and this is just simply how many more actions you can do before you need to take a quick little break to let it regen. And next is sanity, and this affects you in two different ways throughout the game. First is affecting the sanity in the circle bar, and then you also have sanity, which has a negative effect on your health bar as well when it is lowered, and it doesn't allow you to fully heal. You'll see this by like a shiny gray bar on top of your health bar. But don't worry, there are multiple ways to bring your sanity back up, and the first and easiest one is going to be just sitting and laying in your bed. Now this will boost your health back to normal, and it'll also bring your sanity fully back up. Now there is also things like sanity gummies that can help bring up your sanity when you're out in combat if you don't have access to a bed. Now moving on to thirst. Now this one's easy enough to get back up. All you need to do is go over to a water source and you'll see collect dirty water here. We'll just go ahead and lean over and just snag a little bit of dirty water. Sometimes there's a little bit of a lag, but you are getting it. Then all we have to do is come to some sort of kitchen, whether that's at your camp or your house, and just make boiled water. Now this is just the easiest way to do this, and it'll bring your thirst right back up. Now the last thing is going to be hunger, and this is similar to thirst, but unfortunately I'm in an area where there's not many animals, but you can kill animals for meat. You can also try to harvest different fruits or vegetables that you might see lying around. But since I'm in this desert area, there's not really that much, but I did find this little orange bush, which I can pick for food. It really just depends. There's many different options throughout the game while you're exploring. Now, we briefly saw my camp in the last clip, but I did want to explain just a little bit more about the camp. And first, these are an easy way to respawn if you die while out exploring, so I definitely recommend putting one down before you go into town to explore. That way you don't have to travel far distances to get back to where you were. Next, the camp itself, it does allow you to do simple things like cooking, crafting, but do note that if you put a camp down and start processing one of these actions, like I'm doing here, we're just gonna say make a couple different salts from the seawater, and then you move the camp somewhere else, this action, if it's not completed and you didn't pick it back up, it will actually just disappear when your new camp is placed down. So just be aware of that, and be sure to put down a camp before you go exploring some higher level town. Moving further into the game, you will gain the ability to not just make camps, but also bases as well. Now these are pretty awesome, and I definitely recommend building a base early on. But do note that you can actually move your base too when you unlock new zones. So as you can see here, I can simply just move my entire house just slightly over if I need to. If I find more resources, some location, I can just build my house the exact same way I had it without having to risk, rebuilding everything. So this is awesome. And currently there is a 10-minute cooldown timer on this, and it doesn't cost you anything else. So if you haven't done so already, I would definitely recommend trying to do this. And this can be done by pressing the B button on the keyboard and then hitting Z for relocate. So like I said, if you haven't done this already, I would definitely give this a shot if you find a better spot to put your base. Now I do want to make a mention of pickaxes. Now you craft these early on, and these are how you're going to mine or log, and they do both, but you will notice that there is durability on these things, and there is no way to repair this durability. So you will have to craft new ones as they break. So I would definitely recommend, if you're building one, try to build two if you can, just in case you're out and about and one breaks. That way you have a backup if you need either logs or ore. Now let's talk about teleporting. Now there's a couple different ways to teleport throughout the game. You will unlock towers as you are out exploring, and you will also have a teleport back to your house as well. Now the house teleport, you can teleport from anywhere, but you will notice that these like teleportation towers, I'm not able to teleport to. Even though I have the required necessary ingredient to go to them, I cannot travel to them unless you are next to a different teleportation tower or a town or your house. So the house teleport, like I said, is a 10-minute cooldown, which is pretty awesome. Take full abuse of that as if you can. And I have noticed that once you're into your house territory, sometimes you can teleport within it, or you have to go inside your house. But now that we're back inside the house here, we're going to bring up our mini map, and if we want to teleport somewhere, it is now no longer grayed out, and we can teleport straight to a town. So just a little bit more insight on teleports as a whole. Now moving on to some more of the weapon stuff. Now you will be able to make bow and arrows or crossbow and arrows, and one of the great things about these weapons is if you shoot and kill something, you can actually pick back up your arrows. So when you move on to the guns, you will notice that finding ammo, or you're constantly having to create ammo, can be a little bit of a burden. But if you're using things like a crossbow to maybe just take care of some wolves or, you know, hunt down some deer, while you do that, you can just simply run back over the animal. It'll have the arrow right there, and you can pick it back up, so you're not burning through ammo on these types of weapons. Now, while we're talking about weapons, let's just go a little bit deeper in here. So I have my weapon bench, and do note that when you're creating weapons, you do unlock different tiers of weapons, and you'll notice that each tier jumps up a base damage pretty significant. So if you're not already doing this, make sure that you're trying to make the best version of that weapon you possibly can, and then you can go into calibration and actually buff it even more. So you can see that that rifle was 7 out of 7. Now on top of that, you can go into your gear by pressing K or just opening up your menus, and you'll have different mods here that we can enhance the weapon that way. And then we can also move on to the accessories, which will have an effect on the different types of, you know, effects that the weapon has as well. With whether that's faster reloading or if you need a different type of sight on it. So make sure you're doing this kind of stuff while you're building your new weapons for each different zone, because each zone is going to get significantly harder. So as long as you're building those higher tier weapons, you shouldn't struggle at all. Now moving back on a quick tip for our base, I do want to mention that when you build a furnace, I would definitely recommend building 2. The only reason for this is because furnaces run on charcoal, and if you need charcoal a lot, having one furnace just dedicated to that while the other furnace crafts, whether it's bars or ingots, whatever you need it to do, is definitely a big time saver. So just a quick tip for you. Now moving on to staircases on your base. Now you're going to notice pretty early on that it can be pretty frustrating to get a staircase to work on your outside, whether it's foundation or whatever, and you kind of need to move around to make it work. Now, if you don't have it and it wants to try to build up all the time, what you need to do is actually hold shift and just move the scroll wheel, and this will tick it through different options like you can see here, and then eventually one will be for the ground portion. Now moving on to further into the game, you're going to unlock something called the Stardust Resonant Filter. What this does is allows you to purify different materials. One thing to note though, while you're purifying, it's easy to miss that when you do this purification, enemies will spawn. And it tells you right here, monster levels, how many players it recommends, how many different waves of those monsters, and how many elite ones, and also the output of the machine itself. So just be prepared when you start this machine. Now moving on to vehicles themselves. Now there's a couple different vehicles in the game. There's pickups, there's a Jeep kind of thing, you have the motorcycle which you get very early on, and then there is also a two-door car. Now the difference between these is the motorcycle is going to be the quickest option. The Jeep that you get on pretty early on is very, very slow, but the nice thing about this is you can have 4 players in this vehicle. So if you're playing with a bunch of different friends, this might be a better approach for you. And if you need to go switch the vehicle, you just simply go into the garage, hit this, and then you can just select which vehicle you want and hit activate, or you can build it from this menu as well. So just a little tip on which one might be the best in different use cases. Now, while you're driving your vehicle, you do have to worry about repairing it, but then you're also going to need to worry about the fuel for the vehicle itself. And fuel can be pretty easy to find if you know where to look. And what you're looking for is some of these different vehicles, like you can see in front of me, that have the closed trunk in the rear. Now, all you have to do is go over to one of these vehicles, and then we're just going to simply search the car trunk. And bam, there's 3 fuel in this vehicle that we can use to fuel up our bike. So it's pretty easy to do. Just be on the lookout if you're running low on fuel that you have on you. Like I said, these are easy enough to find. It just, you can get blindsided if you don't have some on you at all times. Now another thing you're going to probably stumble across pretty early on, I think there is one in the first zone, is this bus that has these weird arms and it walks up and down the streets. Now, you cannot kill the bus itself, but you can shoot its feet to make it do this, where it actually will fall down and allow you to come inside of it. And what's inside is a chest that you can get daily. So if you find a spot that you can always see this at, where you can build your base, it's honestly not a bad idea to do, just because you can stumble across this thing every day and come and loot it. Now, this one kind of glitched out on me for some reason and wasn't allowing me to open up the chest, but eventually it did. But like I said, this is a daily thing that you can do. Now moving on is Morphic Crates. Now you're going to notice that on your backpack, just above your deviant, is a little thing that'll start to blink like it is right now. Mine's blinking yellow, and it's going to start blinking very, very rapidly. What that means is there is a Morphic chest near you, and all you have to do is press your Q to reveal the chest itself and simply take it out. Like this one, it was very, very easy to do, and you just get some drops from it. Now the next thing you might stumble across are these little purple like glowing gem things, and what you do is you just simply run over them and you just keep running to the next one until eventually it just spawns a chest, and this one's a mystical crate, and you just get some very, very easy loot. Now for this last clip, unfortunately my audio got kind of corrupted here, but it's pretty easy to make money early on. All you need to do is go find some sort of water, and then you're going to go run along the coast of that water picking different types of flowers. Now, you also do want to make sure that you have some sort of boiled water like we discussed earlier in this guide here. And then we're just going to simply take these flowers. We're going to come over to whatever type of kitchen setup you have, and you're going to make fruit tea. Now, make as much as you possibly can, and then all we're going to simply do afterwards is go to a vendor in a different town. Now, I'm going to go over here to Greywater because it's just easy enough to get to, so I'm going to skip ahead here. And now that we're at the vendor itself, we're going to switch over to sell and go under consumables, and here we can sell fruit tea, and each stack is going to sell for 4,500, which is perfect. Now, do note in the bottom right-hand corner, each vendor only has so much money, and it does say how long until they basically restock their shop or whatever it is till they'll have more money. So break it up. If you're doing this a lot for a lot of different cash, you can go to multiple different camps to sell to those vendors itself. So that's all I have for you. Hopefully you guys learned something new that you can take into the game and make this a better experience for yourself.